Kevin and his team of Zara and the twins Hiro and Yuki arrived in Tokyo intent on finding Quentin Covington's son and Lieutenant Q. Kevin believed Q was in charge of Quentin's robotics operations in the country. In order to get close to Q, Kevin and his team designed a battle robot and entered it into Tokyo's underground battle robot scene while wearing outfits to disguise their identities. The ploy worked and got them the introduction to Q that they wanted. But Tokyo police officers raided the underground club. Kevin was able to save Q from getting arrested and possibly deported. Q then invited Kevin and Zara back to his penthouse apartment for a nightcap. Q happily showed his new friends into his penthouse apartment at the top of one of Tokyo's most luxurious and glamorous skyscraper apartment buildings. Zara had gotten word from the twins Hiro and Yuki that they also had safely evaded the police raid. Kevin ordered them to go back to the hotel to await further instructions. At the door to Q's penthouse, they were greeted by a robot butler only 3.5 feet tall. It had delicate treads instead of wheels or feet, arms with more joints than a human's, and a blank black dome for a head. "Welcome home, sir," it greeted Q in a voice like an English gentleman's gentleman. "Hello, Jeeves," Q said as he handed the butler his jacket. "I trust you had an enjoyable evening with the BattleBots, sir." Jeeves smoothly took Q's jacket. Jeeves' many arm joints made the movement like a spider grasping at a fly. "It was a pretty exciting night. Let's just leave it at that. These are my new friends," Q said as he motioned toward Kevin and Zara. "Greetings, sir, madam. May I make you a cocktail?" Jeeves asked as if he were the world's most perfect host. Zara and Kevin traded looks. They needed to keep clear heads. "Actually," Kevin said, "we would really appreciate some coffee if that would be possible." "Certainly," Jeeves replied. "I will serve it in the living room momentarily." Q showed them into the penthouse's sunken living room. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered impressive views across Tokyo's nighttime skyline, full of glittering lights, neon signs, and billboard-sized LED lights. "This view is incredible," Zara exclaimed, stepping closer to get a better view, but Kevin was more interested in Q's decor. Everything in the apartment was decorated with robot motifs. The walls displayed large frame prints of schematics and artist renderings of various kinds of robots. The bookshelves were littered with working miniature robots that performed their duties on a small scale. Even the throw pillow seemed to have a pattern inspired by circuit boards. "Wow, you really do like robots," Kevin noted. Q smiled. "They've been my passion ever since I was a little kid. That's why my dad put me in charge of all of our family's business here in Japan. We have several large-scale robotics design centers and factories in Tokyo." "That's a lot of responsibility," Zara noted. "You're telling me." Q ran his hand through his hair. He didn't show any signs of the male pattern baldness that his father had tried to cover with cheap hair plugs. "But the faith my dad has shown in me has really boosted my confidence. I can't tell you how excited and grateful I am. My dad is the best guy ever." Kevin was stunned that Q had such a distorted view of his own father. Quentin Covington was a narcissistic and egomaniacal billionaire who had enslaved whole communities, destroyed priceless archaeological sites, and devastated entire ecosystems in his mad quest to do whatever it was he was planning to do. Kevin wasn't sure yet what Quentin's endgame was, but with each piece of the blueprint, he was getting closer to figuring it out and stopping it. But before they went any further, Kevin needed to know if Q had been told by his father about Kevin and his other raids on Quentin's compounds and the theft of the other pieces of blueprints. "That sounds like a pretty big operation," Kevin started. "Has your father had any trouble with security issues or espionage? I've been reading a lot about factory break-ins and stuff like that in the news lately." "Yeah," Zara added pointedly. "It's been happening all over the world." Q frowned. "No, I haven't heard anything about that. My father's security is top-notch and he hasn't mentioned any problems." Kevin smiled. "Well, that's really good to hear. Hey, do you mind if we take off these outfits?" He indicated the costumes he and Zara were still wearing. They were great for the robot battles, but after a while they get a little bit uncomfortable. Of course. Please, make yourself at home. Q said. Just then, Jeeves, the robot butler, returned bearing a tray with a coffee service of fine antique porcelain. His tread smoothly rotated so the robot could descend the 3 steps into the sunken living room. Here is the coffee, sir and madame. May I fix you a cup? Cream? Sugar? Jeeves's blank black dome of a head swiveled between Kevin and Zara. Kevin took his coffee black, but Zara requested hers with extra milk and sugar. Jeeves poured a coffee expertly, adding milk and sugar from tiny porcelain vessels. He didn't spill so much as a single grain of sugar, or damage any of the delicate porcelain. He delivered the cups to Kevin and Zara with a little bow of his head. Is there anything else I can bring you this evening, sir? Thank you, Jeeves. Q waved the robot butler away. That will be all for now. Have a good night. Q treated his robotic butler far better than his father treated his human servants. Jeeves guided himself back up the 3 steps out of the living room. His treads rotated smoothly to make the climb again. There wasn't a single rattle from the delicate coffee service on the tray. He's amazing, Zara exclaimed. I know there have been a lot of advancements in robotic technology, but that fine motor control is amazing. Kevin had to agree. He'd seen androids that looked far more human than Jeeves, but they had been clunky and clumsy and ultimately self-destructed. Q smiled with pleasure. Thank you. Jeeves was developed at our factory here. He's actually more of a prototype. We're working on scaling his model up in size and strength significantly, but keep all his precision and delicacy. Kevin leaned forward. This could be a major clue to Quentin's master plan. How large a scale are you aiming for? Much, much bigger, Q nodded. Say by a power of at least 7 or 8. Zara and Kevin traded looks. That would mean the end product robots Q was producing here in Japan would be more than 20 feet tall. Is that really possible? Zara wondered. I mean, to scale up to such a degree but still maintain such a fine sense of motor control? Absolutely, Q exclaimed. It's all part of my father's vision for the future. He's going to change the world. Actually, not just the world, he's going to change the universe, the whole galaxy. Q motioned to another frame schematic on his wall. Kevin stepped closer to get a better look. He saw that it was of a domed city. Kevin couldn't figure out where the city was supposed to be located. The landscape was strange and alien. Nothing like anything Kevin had ever seen in any of his travels around the planet. Surrounding the domed city were robots. Were they guarding it? Kevin looked closer. No, they were building it. Kevin nodded to himself. The pieces of Quentin Covington's blueprints were starting to make sense. Honey, is that you? Called the voice from the next room. A moment later, a tiny Japanese woman stepped into the living room. She wore a silk kimono that beautified her very pregnant belly. Q hurried to her. Anata, I'm so sorry. Did we wake you? We shouldn't have woken you. You and the baby need your sleep. Anata smiled at him and then at Kevin and Zara. It's okay, honey. It was the baby that woke me up. Who are your friends? Q introduced Kevin and Zara to his girlfriend, Anata. Kevin added his congratulations for the new baby Q and Anata were obviously expecting. He thought about his own darling Lily and the life that was growing inside her. He couldn't wait to get back to her. He had promised Lily to be back in time for their gender reveal party. Kevin felt the pressure of the time constraint and wanted to complete his mission more than ever. Zara had fallen into a discussion about robots with Q again. Anata smiled at Kevin. I think getting some air would help the baby settle down and let me sleep. Will you come with me to our rooftop garden? I'd be happy to. Kevin agreed like a gentleman. He offered his arm, knowing that pregnant women sometimes found their balance affected by their bellies. Anata took it with only the lightest of touches and gracefully showed him the way. The garden was lush and sprawling, covering most of the building's rooftop. The views of Tokyo were even more incredible here. Kevin looked out, appreciating all of it. Very different from Chicago, isn't it? Anata asked. Kevin stared at the tiny pregnant woman. There was no way Anata could know he was from Chicago, unless she knew he was Kevin Williams.